The sun cast its golden rays over the kingdom of Olorun, painting the landscape in hues of orange and red. Villagers bustled about, preparing for the annual festival of Ayo, a celebration of love and union. Drums echoed through the air as women adorned in bright Ankara fabrics danced in the market square, their laughter carrying far and wide. It was a time of joy, a time for unions to be sealed, and promises to be exchanged. But not for Abeni. She sat on the wooden steps of her father's hut, her chin resting in her palm, staring at the distant palace. Her sister Aid was beside her, her face dark with worrying. Her sister and her fiancé had been betrothed for nearly 2 years, waiting for the right moment to marry. That moment was to be the festival of Ayo until the king's decree shattered their plans.
No marriages.
Aid muttered, her voice laced with bitterness.
Not until a king decides to remarry himself. How does one man's grief outweigh the happiness of an entire kingdom? The king's sorrow is his own, but why must we all suffer for it?
Abeni clenched her fists.
It's unfair. My father says it's not our place to question the king, but I cannot stay silent.
Aid placed a hand on hers.
What can you do? Abeni, this is beyond us.
She looked into her eyes, her resolve hardening.
Someone has to remind the king what love means. If no one else will, then I will.
The next morning, Abeni gathered her things, a simple arrow and buba, a gourd of water, and a small bundle of food. She wrapped a scarf around her head and set off toward the palace. Her plan was audacious, bordering on reckless. She would disguise herself as a wandering storyteller, weaving tales to reach the king's heart. Abeni's father, a respected elder, had often told her that stories held power they could teach, heal, and even change minds. By the time she reached the palace gates, the sun was high in the sky. The guards, tall men clad in dire tunics and holding spears, eyed her suspiciously.
What business do you have here, woman?
One of them barked.
I am a storyteller.
Abeni replied confidently.
I bring stories to lighten the heavy hearts of Olorun. Surely even the king could use such relief.
The guards exchanged glances before one of them nodded.
Wait here.
Minutes later, Abeni was ushered into the palace courtyard. Her breath caught as she took in the grandeur, the carved pillars, the golden statues, the sprawling gardens filled with vibrant flowers. Yet the air felt heavy, as though the weight of the king's sorrow hung over everything. King Aliwese sat on a raised platform, his expression as cold as stone. His robes were dark, a stark contrast to the colorful surroundings. The sight of him sent a shiver down Abeni's spine, but she refused to falter.
You claim to be a storyteller,
The king said, his deep voice commanding silence across the courtyard.
Tell us a tale, but beware, flattery will not sway me, nor will tales of love.
Abeni bowed deeply.
Your Majesty, I shall tell a tale not of love, but of loss and the courage to find joy again.
She began her story, her voice steady and clear. It was a tale of a farmer who lost his harvest to a great storm, only to discover that the floodwaters had brought fertile soil that would yield even greater crops the following season. As she spoke, she noticed a flicker of emotion in the king's eyes. It was faint, but it was there. He listened intently, his fingers resting on the arm of his throne. When she finished, the courtyard was silent.
Your story is intriguing.
The king said at last.
You may stay for now, but know this, I will not be moved by mere words.
Over the following days, Abeni told more stories, each carefully crafted to nudge the king's heart. She spoke of warriors who found strength in unity, of rivers that carved paths through mountains, and of mothers who rebuilt their homes after the flames. Slowly, the king began to open up. He told Abeni of his late wife, Queen Adila, whose laughter had once filled the palace halls. Her death had left a void so vast that he could not bear to see others find happiness while he languished in grief.
Do you think grief ever truly fades?
The king asked one evening, his voice barely above a whisper. Abeni hesitated before replying.
Grief may not fade, Your Majesty, but it can transform. It can become a reminder of what was beautiful, and a guide to what still can be.
For the first time, the king smiled, a small, tentative smile, but a smile nonetheless.